In this video, we want to explore how we can return different columns and different rows from a data set inside the R environment. The data set that we're going to use in this video is empty cars. Empty cars is a built-in data set in the R environment, and you don't need to use that read.csv function to load any data. It's already there. What I'm gonna do is I just gonna refresh my mind about the data set. For refreshing my mind about the data set, I'm gonna use the head function, which means give me the head of data, again, which means to give me the first six observation of what? Of empty cars data set. I see the first six observations are different cars, Mazda, Datsun, and so on, and a number of different variables, MPG, CYL, DISP, HP, and so on. Something which is important here, please consider that this, you see this car number, this is not a separate column. This is the row names. For example, the first row name is Mazda. You see there isn't any heading for this for this how shall I say, for this car names. That's because it's not a variable. They are just they are in the name of the rows. Let's say we are not yet convinced we have enough knowledge about the data set and we want to explore it a bit more. I'm gonna put a question mark before the data set name, and I'm gonna say or question mark data set, which means give me some information about the data set, and this is the result. In the result, I see there are 11 different columns. Column 1, MPG, is miles divided by gallon. CYL is cylinders, DISP is displacement, HP is the horsepower, and we have the weight, rear axle ratio, and other type of information. For example, if the engine is V-shaped or straight, the transmission shown by AM, number of gears, and the other variable here. When we want to deal with columns and rows, the most important thing is this piece of rule which is presented in this chunk of code. What we have here is the name of the data set and open bracket and close bracket here, and one comma. Information about row gonna come before the comma, and information about the column gonna come after comma. Let's explore this by a few examples. Coming back to the data set, let's say I want to return, I'm going to do a very simple example, and I want to return the information for this row, which is the second row, 1, 2. The second row name is Mazda RX4 VAG, and the third column, 1, 2, 3, it's called displacement, and the corresponding value for the Mazda RX4 VAG and its displacement is 160. I want to return that number. I can return that number by telling R, go to the empty cars data set. The first one I said is the row, the second row, comma, and the third column. Go to the empty cars data set, return second row and third column. He's telling me it's 160. I can also call that specific value by their names. I can tell him, give me the corresponding number for Mazda RX4 VAG for the row and displacement, 160. Or maybe I want to use a combination of names and numbers. So I can tell him, go to the empty cars and give me the corresponding value for the second row and displacement, same thing, and go to the empty cars data set, give me the information for the Mazda RX-4 VAG from the third column, the same result. In the previous slide, we talked about how we can return one value pertaining to one column and one row. What's going to happen if we want to return all of one column, all of the observations in one column? Let's say we want to return the MPG column from the empty cars data set. We already know this method. One method can be using this $sign. So I'm gonna tell R, find empty cars data set. $sign means go inside the empty cars data set and find MPG variable. In addition to this method, there are two other methods as well. I'm gonna call the data set. I'm gonna write nothing for the rows, before comma deals with the row, and I'm gonna mention the MPG column name. When I write nothing, it means all of that. If I don't specify something specific, R considers I wanna get everything. The second method would be again telling R go to the empty cars, and before the comma is empty, which means everything, and after comma I'm telling him the first column. This is another example from the same data set. I want to return HP column. First method, go to the empty cars, $sign, inside the empty cars, give me the HP column. Empty cars, open bracket, nothing for the rows, which means all of them, and I specify HB for the columns. Again, empty cars, the first argument is for rows, empty, which means I don't specify anything, meaning give me all of them, and the fourth column. Now let us explore how we can return a row. Let's say I want to return the row which is called Mazda RX-4, which is the first row in that data set. The data set was empty cars. I can do it by two different methods. As you can see, I can't use $sign for the rows. So I'm going to call the data set empty cars. I'm not going to put anything after the comma because comma after comma is related to the columns, and I want to return all of the columns. However, all of the columns just for one row, which is called Mazda RX-4. I can do the same thing by specifying the location of that. I can tell R, find empty cars data set, and inside the empty cars data set, give me the first row and all of the columns. Another example from returning a single row can be returning the row which is called Merck 280. This row is row number 10. Can be returned by empty cars, the name of the row and all of the columns because it's empty after comma. Empty cars, return the row number 10 and all of the columns because it is empty after comma. We can also return more than just one column at the same time. However, please consider when we want to return more than one object, we have to use the combination. We have to use the C function for combining different objects. So in this specific case, if I want to return MPG and HB columns, I can combine them and put them after comma. So what I'm telling R is find the empty cars data set, all of the rows because before comma is empty, and I'm telling him give me a combination of MPG and HB columns. The second method is, like we can tell R, find the empty cars data set, all of the rows, because before comma is empty, and give us a combination of the first and fourth column. We can return more than one row as well, similar to what we did when we were trying to return more than one column. We have to use the C function for combination. However, we're gonna put our arguments before comma. Let's return Mazda RX-4 and Merc 280 together. This guy is observation number 1. This guy is observation number 10. We can tell R, find empty cars data set, give us a combination of Mazda RX-4 and Merc 280 and all of the columns. Or we can tell him, find empty cars and give us a combination of the first and 10th row and all of the columns. This is one step further. I want to return the observations. I want to return more than one column and more than a row. The rows I want to return is Mazda RX-4 and Merc 280, and columns are MPG and HP. This is observation 1. This is observation 10. This is variable 1. This is variable 4. The first method is using a combination of the row names, as you can see here, Mazda RX-4, Merc 280, before comma, because they are the rows, and the combination of the columns gonna come after comma. Maybe you want to use the column number and tell R, go to the empty cars, find column 1, find row 1 and row 10, and find their corresponding columns, which are called MPG and HP. Or maybe you want to use the names for the observations and column numbers for the column numbers, or you can also use numbers for both observations and columns. This is another example for returning columns and rows. We have 3 different rows and 3 different columns. The rows are identified by their numbers 2, 3, and 8, and columns are identified by their names HP, WT, and QSEC. I'm going to call the data set a combination of the row numbers and a combination of variable names.